Welcome to the channel. Welcome to today's run through of all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Before getting into it, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's jump straight into it. So all the talk of the town at the moment is regarding the goalkeeper situation. No surprises there considering what happened with the game over the weekend. So let's run through all the latest there. There's been loads of reports coming out. We've got Athletic, we've got reports Donnarumma, Martinez situation, all sorts to run through. So we're going to kick off with the goalkeeper situation. So first of all, Nave Solt said that Manchester United have maintained all summer that signing a goalkeeper isn't a priority, with Andre Onana set to stay as number one. However, his admission against Arsenal and Amorim's defence of him, along with no public confirmation as first choice, have raised doubts. So what Nave Solt's alluding to there is that they've been told that, you know, in order for us to bring in a goalkeeper, we needed to sell maybe Onana, but he isn't for sale or he hasn't gone anywhere. There's no interest in Andre Onana from anywhere else. It wasn't seen as a priority. However, with Ruben Amorim picking Bayindir ahead of Onana, they're now saying that that's raised doubts about him being first choice. But I believe that Onana will be first choice. It's just he's only just come back from injury, so maybe Amorim didn't want to risk him in a game when he hasn't had a pre-season against a big team like Arsenal, and Bayindir's been playing in pre-season, playing alongside the defence and stuff as well. I think that people have, I think it's being dived into too deeply the Onana situation, or it could be that Ruben Amorim's doing a Rasmus Højlund and just saying, well, I want to get rid of you. You're not going to go anywhere, so I'm just not going to pick you as a way to force you out of the club so that I can get another goalkeeper. That could be the other way of looking at it, but I feel it's more likely, it's just because he just came back from injury. Now, Nave Solt also said that goalkeeper isn't a priority position to strengthen this summer. Suggestions of Gianluigi Donnarumma were quickly shut down as he isn't being pursued. We know Donnarumma, or unless you don't know, is more likely to be going to Manchester City than United. I think we've made an inquiry, but I think the price, the wages and things like that are just far too expensive for us to do without selling Onana. And as we've just explained, there's no suggestion that we're going to be selling Onana this late in the transfer window because there is just no links or no interest in him. So it is what it is. Now, in terms of the goalkeeper situation, Laurie Whitworth had the following to say: I've been told all along that a goalkeeper would be dependent on Andre Onana's future, and there's been no indication that he would depart this window. They made a loan bid for Emi Martinez, which indicates they're not wholly satisfied with the goalkeeper department, but not to the degree where they'll spend £30 million. The Donnarumma stuff, that's one that's not one they're going to pursue. There's caveats. You never know what's going to happen in the market, but I don't sense any great appetite to pursue that position because they've money elsewhere on the goals, which was the big point that they needed to address. So Laurie Whitwell again suggesting that unless Onana is sold, or maybe Bayindir, you could get someone like Sané Lemens in, but there's no interest in Bayindir either. So unless Onana is sold, it's unlikely that we're going to be getting a goalkeeper. But he did also say, look, things can happen in the transfer window, never say never type situation. So, but yeah, it's not looking good in terms of bringing in a goalkeeper for the rest of this window. Alex Crook said that as it stands, with 2 weeks of the window left, Man United are not progressing with a deal for any goalkeeper. Interestingly, though, a South American journalist who's actually fairly credible said around Emi Martinez to Man United, because that might be one to keep an eye on towards the end of the window. What the South American journalist was saying was that the deal was very close. The coaching staff, especially Ruben Amorim, wanted him, and Martinez knew that Amorim wanted him. Amorim could not convince the United board that it was important to spend on a good goalkeeper. Now, we need to bear that in mind, because Ruben Amorim, if that's reports to be believed, has asked the board to go and get him a goalkeeper, and they don't. When we have Onana throwing it in the back of the net for games this season, or Bayindir doing what Bayindir did at the weekend as well, a lot of people are going to come for Ruben Amorim, and I understand the reason why. But ultimately, if he said to the board, I need a new goalkeeper, and the board don't do anything regarding that, if they can't find a goalkeeper or can't move on a goalkeeper or whatever, That's all Ruben Amorim can do. He's not in charge of transfers. He's a coach. He's the head coach at Manchester United. He's there to coach the players. All he can do in that scenario is just say, look, these are the areas that I want to strengthen. And if goalkeeper was one of them and he doesn't get given the tools to do the job, then when that happens, I don't think we should be pointing the finger at Ruben Amorim regarding that personally. But all the reports in summary on the goalkeeper situation, it's looking unlikely. It's looking unlikely that we're going to be going for a goalkeeper, barring some late, a flurry of activity late in the window. Someone comes in for Onana or someone makes a late bid for Bayinda, then maybe it could present an opportunity for us to bring in a goalkeeper. Fabrizio Romano has been saying Seny Lemens is the most realistic target. I personally would still keep an eye on Emi Martinez's situation. If his price drops, maybe we could do something there, or later on in the window, do we go back in for a loan because that would represent a cheap deal for us to potentially go and do. So we'll have to just wait and see how all that plays out. But at the time of recording this video, doesn't look likely that it's going to be any movement on the goalkeeper, which I do think is a mistake. But going back to that last report, not necessarily a mistake by Amorim. I think it's a mistake by the board to put faith in the current goalkeeper because as we've seen, against Arsenal at the weekend, mistakes will happen with this goalkeeper, with the goalkeepers that we've got. And it doesn't fill me with any more confidence that Onana would have been any different in goal, because he's capable of doing exactly the same thing as Bayinda. We've got too many goalkeepers that make mistakes consistently. It's the only thing they're consistent at is making mistakes. So no, it does concern me. I just hope that it doesn't end up costing us like last season, because the problem we had last season, we were making the mistakes, but then we couldn't score. But then the case in point is against Arsenal, we couldn't score as well. So we start scoring goals and getting that side of things done, then hopefully it won't be a massive issue. But I still think we're going to drop points. Well, we already have dropped points this season because of goalkeepers. I think we're going to drop more points as well. So it is a bit of a worry that we're not potentially going for a goalkeeper. But, what can we do if we're in a position where you have to sell a goalkeeper to buy a goalkeeper, and we can't sell a goalkeeper because who wants to buy Bayinda and who wants to buy Onana? Then it's one of those, and it's one of those situations. But I'm sure you're going to share your thoughts on all of that in the comments below. But now the other area that we are looking to, the two priorities left in the transfer window, according to David Ornstein and Fabrizio Romano, was midfielder, goalkeeper. We've just spoke about the goalkeeper there. Let's go for all the midfield news. So an athletic midfielder has been on United's agenda all summer, and Baleba was not the only target considered, but he has been at the top of the list. So there will be some internal debate about whether to pivot to another number 6. There's an appreciation for Morten Hjulmand. Adam Wharton at Crystal Palace is another who could come into the reckoning, but United will carefully weigh up whether to spend more money at a time when they need to make sales. Baleba presented a special opportunity, and making a move for a midfielder is not guaranteed. So Mark Critchley and Laurie Whitwell in The Athletic, two very good journalists when it comes to United as well, also suggesting a similar thing with the fact that we do want an athletic midfielder. And again, you've got to remember this. Ruben Amorim has told the board that he also wants an athletic midfielder. So he's gone to the board and said, look, I need a midfielder and I need a goalkeeper. They're his next two priorities for the rest of the transfer window. And if the board don't deliver, that's on the board. That's on Ineos. That's on Jason Wilcox and Christopher Vival and Omar Barada, not on Ruben Amorim. So if we're watching games and we're getting overrun in midfield, and the goalkeeper's throwing the ball in the net every game, hopefully not. Ruben Amorim has tried to address that. He's done all he can. All he can do now is just coach the players to play better. And he does have a say on, obviously, the team selection. If he keeps picking Bayinda, for example, and he constantly keeps conceding goals from corners, that's on Ruben Amorim. But in terms of if he's doing what he can, then we need to bear that in mind when it comes through this season, if we don't get these areas strengthened. But interesting, again, the same names. Hjulmand and Adam Wharton are the two names that obviously we're linked with as well. But, undecided on what to do. And it's a difficult one, because what do we do? Do we hang fire, keep the money, go for Baleba next summer if he is seen as the perfect signing? Or do you waste the money or spend the money on another midfielder that's not quite as good as Baleba, and then potentially miss out on Baleba next summer? So I think they're in that position where they're having those sort of conversations and debates. What do you do? Do you hang fire, go for your number one option, which is Carlos Baleba, but obviously that will be next summer? Or Do you pivot, go for another midfielder, maybe a partner for Carlos Baleba as well? And I think that's the sort of conversations they'll be having. But we'll need to wait and see what happens regarding that. On Adam Wharton, Graham Bailey said that Manchester United scouts were present at Chelsea Stadium to watch Crystal Palace's Adam Wharton in action. But we're probably scouting loads of games. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to make a move for Adam Wharton, because Adam Wharton's going to be just as expensive, if not more expensive than what we walked away from Carlos Baleba for. So, but again, we'll have to see what they decide to do, who they decide to pivot to. One other player that we could decide to pivot to is Lucien Agoumé. I brought you some news on him the other day, and we did a bit of a comparison compared to Carlos Baleba. But another Spanish outlet close to Sevilla are suggesting that Manchester United are targeting Sevilla midfielder Lucien Agoumé, who has a £35 million release clause in his contract. And then a different Sevilla news outlet also suggesting that Manchester United are weighing up to offer 22 to 26 million pound for Lucien Agoumé, while Sevilla refer to the release clause of close to 35 million pounds. So there is a few more rumours and murmurings potentially linking us with Lucien Agoumé. I'd want to see a little bit more credibility, though, personally, because it's local news outlets at the moment, or not local, but news outlets that are close to Sevilla. I don't know the credibility of them. I'd want to see, an Ornstein Romano, somebody of that nature, linking us with him first, because it does feel a bit coincidental. A little bit like the news story I brought you yesterday from saying Onana was going to go back to Inter, which has been completely debunked from the Sun, where it just feels like a little bit convenient that we're in for a midfielder, or we want a midfielder. We want Carlos Baleba. Lucien Agoumé is a very similar profile of player to Baleba. Is it clickbait? I'm not sure, but would be a really interesting profile of player, and especially for £35 million, because Laurie Whitwell was suggesting that the fee that was murmured maybe between the intermediaries for, one of the fees that was mentioned around Carlos Baleba was 55 to 60 million pounds. I don't think we actually made that offer, but that's what he was suggesting in here. And if we've got that money available, then 35 million pounds doable for us as well. So we'll have to wait and see how that one plays out. I do think he's an interesting profile of player. Ticks the boxes of what we maybe would be looking for. Is a good, alternative to Carlos Baleba. Whether he's as good as Carlos Baleba, we don't know, because he doesn't play in the Premier League. The reason why I think Baleba is so desirable is because he's Premier League proven. He's young. He has all the attributes that we're looking for in a midfielder: pace, power, athleticism, defensive monster, ball carrier. Agoume is very similar in terms of his profile and his play style, but obviously he hasn't done it in the Premier League, and that's the risk. But is it a risk United would take for £35 million? Who knows? So we'll have to pay attention to that and see how that plays out in towards the end of the transfer window. But give us your thoughts and feelings on the midfield in the comments as well. I'll be interested to read those and see what you've got to say regarding the situation later. Let's go through the rest of the transfer news. So yesterday there was a story that I brought to you from Italian media regarding Zirkzee and interest from Napoli. I did say take it with a pinch of salt. Didn't trust Italian sources, especially around Joshua Zirkzee. Matteo is a good source, works with Romano, come out saying that Manchester United see Joshua Zirkzee as a key player and have no plans to let him go. Zirkzee himself is also keen to remain at the club. And then Fabrizio Romano also debunked the stories as well. Manchester United consider Joshua Zirkzee not for sale this summer. Decision made by the board and Ruben Amorim months ago, never in talks with any Italian club. So we need to be careful with Italian media. They're just full of bullshit at the moment and clickbait. Like we had a whole scenario for the first few weeks of the transfer window about Jadon Sancho going Juventus until David Ornstein come out and said, I don't know what anybody's on about. I've never heard anything about Sancho and Juventus. And all of those rumours went pretty quiet just after that, didn't they, conveniently? And it feels like the similar thing with Joshua Zirkzee. However, Fabrizio Romano did say that Napoli had direct contact with Man United today following Romelu Lukaku's injury, as he'll be out for more than 3 months. Napoli asked for loan deal conditions for Rasmus Højlund. Man United want to keep Joshua Zirkzee. No talks despite links today. Clear plan by Ruben Amorim. So, and again, I did say in yesterday's video, would it not make more sense for Napoli to inquire about, Rasmus Højlund, who's available, if they want to get a stopgap player in with Romelu Lukaku being injured now for a few months, and according to Romano, they have started asking for deal conditions about a loan, so that could be another option potentially for Rasmus Højlund to go to Napoli, which we I actually think that would be a great shout for him to go there, play under Antonio Conte, and then even if Lukaku comes back fit, would be a decent striker for him to learn off of as well. So I actually think that would be a good move by Rasmus, but we'll need to see how that one plays out. Ben Jacobs and Alex Crook said Napoli are considering a move for Rasmus Højlund in light of Romelu Lukaku's injury, £40 million asking price, but Man United could yet entertain a loan under the right conditions despite the preference to sell. So as we've heard, we would prefer to sell Højlund even at a loss just to get the money in, but a loan with an obligation to buy would probably be favourable for us as well, because at least we can write him off from a book value perspective as well. And then the Athletic were also saying though that Atalanta continue to follow Rasmus Højlund's situation and have given considerations to bringing him back to Bergamo. £75 million, please. We want a refund if he goes back to Atalanta, is all I would say there. But, we know Rasmus Højlund's been exiled and is being, effectively forced out of the club by not being even on the bench at the weekend as well. We'll just need to wait and see where he goes, who he goes, whether it's a loan, whether it's a permanent sale or anything of that nature. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Now, my phone is going off it with notifications. What on earth is happening at the time of recording? Alejandro Garnacho has told his pals he is joining Chelsea. Chelsea officials have instructed Garnacho to be patient and bide his time before they sign him, and club-to-club talks are expected to accelerate in the coming days. United have been quoting potential suitors a transfer fee in the region of £50 million for their academy graduate. Chelsea believe they can be negotiated down owing to the Argentine's toxic relationship with Amorim. So not really an update apart from Garnacho has told his friends he's joining Chelsea from Alex Crook. We knew that anyway. So yeah, not exactly breaking news. We know Garnacho's going to Chelsea, and Chelsea are just playing the transfer game of trying to get him on a cheap deal. We're standing firm on our price, and we'll meet in the middle somewhere at the end of the window. We all know what's going to happen there. It's going to be like 40 million plus some add-ons, because we're saying 50, they're offering 30. It'll be in the middle somewhere with some add-ons. It's just annoying that we can't get that deal done early, because maybe that money from Garnacho could have been the difference for us going for Carlos Baleba and maybe actually being able to make an official bid. But at the time, if we haven't got the full £100 million that it's going to cost available, you can't start negotiations for a player of that sort of price. You can't say, well, we've only got £60 million, but can we start negotiating with Baleba for 100, please? Relying on exits, because that's just stupidity. But yeah, give us your thoughts on that in the comments. We might as well go through the Garnacho news now. So sticking with Garnacho, Alejandro Garnacho is fully expected to leave, with Chelsea in talks with Man United in the background, and the player very clear on his intentions. Joining Chelsea is his only desire, with an agreement on personal terms done and sealed for weeks. Manchester United hope to get that fresh money as soon as possible, which is key part of their budget for this summer. So that was from Fabrizio Romano. And again, that maybe would have been the difference for us having the cash available to enter, go aggressive for Carlos Baleba with Brighton. But if we don't have the money, because we're waiting for, these players that are dragging their heels and waiting for other clubs to make bids, and they're all holding on to the lastminute.com to get, cheaper prices. It is what it is. I don't know, that's the transfer game, I suppose. But yeah, it's very frustrating. The exits have been one of the biggest disappointments for me this transfer window, because I wanted to see how Ineos move in the market. Can we actually get some exits done? The only one we've done is Marcus Rashford, and credit to him, he's the only one that's got himself a move, taken a pay cut, and done all he can to actually leave the club and play football. And credit to Marcus Rashford for that, because he's the only one that's done that. All the others are just dragging their heels and are effectively in a position where they're just quite comfortable to not play football for months. Garnacho has already been dropped from the Argentina national team for the upcoming internationals, and he's going to find himself difficult to get back in if he's not playing any football. It's just very frustrating, because, like I said, that was the one thing for me from Ineos, is how we deal with these exits. But I do actually think they've handled it okay on the reverse side of that, because what else can you do? They've put them up for sale, they've banned them from the first team, they've effectively told them to piss off and find clubs and done all of that. and it just shows the characters of the players. Because, like I said, Marcus Rashford wants to play football. He wants to be in the World Cup squad. He's done everything possible to get himself a move early and facilitate that move. Whether you agree with it or not, that's the reality. He is playing football for Barcelona, and these other players who wanted time to go to find an exit have done fuck all apart from turn down deals, and are just waiting for one club to come in at the end of the window, and are quite happy just to sit there and not play any football. So in terms of the attitude and the difference between the attitude and the players, it couldn't be night and day. Marcus Rashford wants to play football, and these don't, for whatever reason, or they do, but they're just waiting for specific clubs to come in, and it's just a nightmare. But I don't know what else Ineos were meant to do. I think they've done all they can. It's just the players and their refusal to actually want to go and play football that's causing the problem, in my opinion. But you will have different ones on that in the comments, as I'm sure you're going to share them regarding that. But let's quickly go through the rest of the exit news. So obviously we had news yesterday. Jadon Sancho had rejected an offer to Roma. So keep a close eye on Jadon Sancho's situation too for these days. Sources guarantee that Manchester United were prepared to accept AS Roma's proposal worth £20 million between loan fee and obligation to buy to get Sancho on almost a guaranteed permanent deal in summer 2026. For United, the fee was good and they were ready to proceed, but the real issue remains Sancho. Again, he has to decide his future, and Sancho has told AS Roma he has decided not to accept their proposal. Roma are waiting and hoping to make it happen, but financial and technical factors were crucial for Sancho. Let me repeat that part. Waiting to hope financial and technical factors were crucial for Sancho. This is Fabrizio Romano confirming that that it's financial, the reason why he's rejected that loan offer or the offer to go to Roma. He remains another important part of United's outgoings with the fee, but also a heavy salary. So Romano clarifying, the situation between Sancho and Roma, saying that we were happy to accept the offer that was on the table, but Jadon Sancho has decided not to accept their proposal, and financial and technical factors were crucial for Sancho. There are some murmurings that maybe Roma might wait and come back in for him as well, but basically it's a financial decision for Sancho. Di Marzio said that AS Roma will make another attempt tomorrow to convince Jadon Sancho. Manchester United have made it clear to the winger that Roma's proposal was the only concrete one on the table. Gasperini has already spoken with him several times, while Leon Bailey is also pushing to change his mind. So Di Marzio is basically saying that United have made it clear to Sancho, this is the only offer we're going to accept. And he still refused to go as well. He's just waiting for a loan, isn't he? He's waiting for a loan to Dortmund, where we'll have to pay half of his salary, and then he's going to go on a free transfer. And part of me thinks, right, going back to the original stories, let's say, like, part of me is as at this stage now, because I'm annoyed with the exits, right, where, and here's a question for you to answer in the comments, right, do we just bite the bullet and not sign any more players and make a statement for the exits? Because if we sell players, we might be able to make some more signings towards the end of the transfer window, because we need the money and we obviously need the financial wiggle room. But part of me thinks, right, sod it then, don't buy any more players, stick with what we've got, which I know will suck, but we've gone through all the news there. We might not be buying any players anyway, and just refuse all these loan deals that are going to come in at the end of the transfer window, because there's talks that Malacia might be offered a loan deal as well to leave, and just blatantly refuse to say, no, we've given you time and space to find exits. You haven't. So unlucky, you're part of you're still going to be part of the bomb squad. You can use the quarantine facilities. I wouldn't even want them around the 21s, though, with some of their attitudes. I wouldn't want them poisoning the under 21s neither. I would just refuse to have them entirely around the squad and just say you can keep training and rocking up to training at 5 o'clock when the first team are not here as well, and see how that does for your career in the future in a World Cup year where you're not going to play football. And good luck, even if your contract runs out next summer, who is going to pay you anywhere near the sort of salary that you are now, or anywhere near the the fee in order to get a player that hasn't played football for over 12 months in Jadon Sancho's case? Like, part of me thinks we should just do that out of spite, but I know the club won't, because we're desperate for the money and we want the money in, and it's just really annoying. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments. Would you do that as an alternative? So it meant signing no more players is stand up to player power and just say, right, well, you've refused exits, we've accepted offers, you've refused, so, you know, good luck turning up for Carrington at 5 o'clock and good luck missing out on the World Cup. Like, personally, I'm at a stage now, because the exits are driving me insane, that I would probably do that, but that's just very spiteful of me to feel that way. But give us your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments. And then Fabrizio Romano on Sancho said, Manchester United are aware of Jadon Sancho's plan to consider different proposals after rejecting AS Roma on Monday. United insists for Sancho to find a solution as soon as possible. So who knows what he's got lined up, unless he is waiting for Juventus. He could be waiting for Juventus to come in at the end if they sell a player, but we'll have to wait and see. Just very infuriating. I share your frustrations, you know, on the exits. It's just so annoying, and I can't understand the mentality of professional football players that are just happy to not be playing football for 3 months, 3 or 4 months, since, you know, they've not even kicked a ball in anger in pre-season, waiting for clubs that clearly don't want them anyway, because if they were their number one priorities, like, why did Chelsea sign Jamie Gittins and not Garnacho? First of all, why are they not hanging around waiting for Jamie Gittins to come in? Well, clearly because they see Jamie Gittins as the top priority to go for. You know, I would be asking myself that question if I was these players, but I'm not, and they're in a, you know, totally different position to what I am. I'm just a dude with a microphone and an opinion. But share yours in the comments below. And then finally, this was really interesting, I felt, actually. So Ruben Amorim is understood to view the bench as a decisive factor this season. He has urged his player to abandon the culture of frustration that emerged under predecessor Erik ten Hag, when those omitted from the lineup were often left disillusioned. So that's interesting. Saying Ruben as basically told the players, look, just because you're on the bench, it's not seen as a negative, because if you remember, Ten Hag would put players on the bench and never play them. There was a report that came out, and I can't remember who it was from, but it was from one of our young players that was on the bench week in, week out, but never got any minutes. And he said that he didn't understand what he had to do to get into the first team under Erik ten Hag. And that's one of the reasons why Sancho spat his dummy out of his pram as well, because he was like, well, Anthony's playing regardless of his performances, so what am I meant to do to get in the first team? And it caused a massive problem behind the scenes, which is why we had, you know, a massive issue in terms of the culture at United, as well as player power and stuff as well. But then the report goes on to say that Amorim has warned that sulking will not be tolerated. Instead, he wants substitutes to see themselves as game changers and embrace the responsibility of being the difference when called upon. This is from Sam C., who also went on to say that Ruben Amorim has already laid out his philosophy at Carrington, stressing that selection will not simply come down to who begins a match, but also who can finish it. Amorim has explained that some of his key decisions at Man United will be based on the final 30 minutes rather than the starting whistle, underlining his belief that games are often won and lost in that spell. So that's really interesting from Sam C, which would explain why, you know, Diego Dallo started the game against Arsenal instead of Amad Diallo, because maybe Amorim in his head was like, well, if it's a tight game and I need a goal, I can bring Amad Diallo on at the end of the game when the game's stretched and everyone's tired, who could make a difference. And it almost worked, because I did think Amad made a difference and came on and changed the game for us in that second half. We just obviously still couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. But the idea was there. And maybe we'll need to take that into consideration when we see some of the team selections this season, where it's not just about Ruben Amorim's not just picking the first 11. He's also maybe benching some players because he'll see them as an impact later on in games as well. So I think we are going to see that bit of rotation between certain players and positions, depending on who he feels that actually can end the game better and how he envisages that game going as well, which I thought was really interesting, which does explain some of the decisions, I think, from the weekend as well, and potentially some of the decisions going forward. So I thought that was worth bringing to your attention to bear in mind going forward. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video. That's you all up to date with the latest news and transfer updates. Smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.